Okay, so here's another example of the integration. And I said I'd come back to CSR and wellness and being a really great workplace. What we're seeing as we kind of do more research and understand who are the best, using objective standards, what are the best workplaces, and then what are the most socially and environmentally responsible organizations. We're now, and there's lists of these that are published, and I got some of them up here that are Canadian. What's interesting is there's a convergence. That year after year, you see some of the same businesses on the same list. And they're socially responsible. They're also great workplaces. And it's all totally connected. They're basically saying that we're a values-based organization. That translates into how we develop our relationships with every community in which we're based. And it defines, those same values and ethics define how we relate to our customers. And those same values and ethics define how we relate as a business to our employees and how they relate to each other. So that's what we're seeing. That's the connection. And it's interesting because even now, how many have separate kind of departments or teams or divisions that look after social responsibility and reporting on social responsibility? How many have integrated HR and CSR recently in their business? Nobody? Okay. You probably didn't think you were going to be talking about this today, right? Well, it's very important. I'll give you an example of an organization that has Nexen. I've done a little bit of work with them, and they basically brought it all together. They said their OHS, and you can go online and look at their new annual report for corporate responsibility, and it's basically health, safety, environment, and community, and it's all kind of rolled together. So that's the approach, and that's integrating, and there's all kinds of synergies. And guess what? All of this integration that I'm talking about, it will save you money. Because you don't need separate initiatives for all this stuff. So there's a huge efficiency argument to doing this. So I'm now going to talk about leveraging, and leveraging health promotion in particular. And again, if you're on these committees, I know because you've told me. And the point here is use those venues as opportunities for moving from just addressing individual risk factors to instituting comprehensive workplace health promotion and risk reduction programs, and always be looking for opportunities to kind of get below that tip of the iceberg, to get down to the fundamental causes, if you like, that affect people's well-being and their ability to perform their jobs. So I'll give you an example. I did a little bit of work a while ago with Calgary Police Service, and they had a new wellness committee, and there's people, big organization, so people didn't know each other. So the first thing we did was we went around, and people talked about what they wanted to achieve by being on this committee, spending time, because time was really valuable. And it was interesting that when they heard, as each person spoke, it became clear that these people are here to achieve more than just an improved wellness program and another gym, because they're putting gyms into their various facilities. These people were really after some of the organizational factors that affected workload, that affected things like, basically how tired people are when they come to work, big issue for police. So they were they basically had brought in to this what had been defined as kind of a wellness committee, an agenda that was actually much more organizational. And it was a very positive discussion, because it made people realize that, we can't do all this at once, but as we see the opportunities, we can actually push to the right side of this curve. So that's a real live example. And as you do that, here's what, and again, a lot of information here. I'm not going to read it to you, obviously, but you will have it in the the PDF you can get from the conference website. But there's a couple of key shifts in thinking that you need to just bear in mind. Sure, you want to have the best possible comprehensive wellness programs, and that needs to include EAP, and you want to communicate really well so everybody knows that these are available. But as you move more to the organizational end of that continuum, what you're doing is you're moving away from a program-based approach. You need to think much more systemically. So let's say the Wellness Committee actually launches a series of, you actually build it in. You work with your training people and you build in to the training menu of what people can take a series on respectful relationships. What you need to communicate is that this is stuff that needs to pervade the entire organization. And I know some organizations, when they implement this, they require everybody to take that kind of session. They require it. Okay? So it's systemic as opposed to a program. That's a really important emphasis. And I'm going to leave you with that. But that's a shift. You know, as you move from the wellness, if you start leveraging wellness, as you move to a more organizational focus, then it becomes less programmatic and much more systemic, and so you want to kind of embed it. So then it basically, you don't need the program. You don't need a budget line to do this, because it starts happening just because it's the way people go about doing their work and relating to each other. Okay, so here's the design piece, and this is the list that I was telling you about, and basically it covers many of the points that Jody has mentioned in your 12 psychological risk factors, many of the things that Martin has been writing about for years in terms of, you know, how you actually reduce stress and create a psychologically safe environment. But this is the list that if you take the little title and basically delete it and put in the word high-performing workplace, that's exactly what you've got. This is a definition of an environment that encourages people to really contribute their best. That's how to think of it. So, you know, the language you use to talk about these things becomes very important, tactically very important, as you talk about it. And if some of you may be into lean. How many are doing kind of lean, whether it's Six Sigma or, sure. So, again, you can adapt this to whatever your latest kind of, performance improvement initiative is, and you can actually look at the ingredients and these items that very much have to do with people's well-being. You will find them coming up in many of these performance-related interventions in workplaces. So just, again, one of the things you can do is to help make those connections. But this is it, basically. And the point here is that it's not just one of them. I mean, you may chip away one at a time. You might, as I suggested earlier, run a series of seminars or learning sessions on respectful relationships. But you need to have the bigger picture in mind, and you need to say, okay, so what's next? And how can we actually help make people's work more challenging and interesting? Well, how do you do that? Well, let's go back up. Communication, number 2. Number 3, autonomy and input. Actually, if you're looking for process improvement suggestions, the first place you should be going, here's the lean thing, the first place you should be going is your frontline employees and saying, what can you suggest to actually improve the way we make our products or the services we provide? And you're involved right there. You're helping people improve their work. You're giving them opportunities for input and autonomy. You're exercising great two-way communication. And this is not idle stuff. BMW, a brand that, is a pretty prestigious brand, they just designed a whole new factory for workers 50 years of age and older. And they knew that they've got a graying workforce. And they know that the skills and experience of those workers is vital. They also knew that the old production system was taking a huge toll on these older workers. So what did they do? Well, they got together their older workers and they say, you people come up with suggestions about what the new factory should be like that will really support you to do your best. And there were over 70 suggestions. That's how the factory was designed. Well, there's a lot of those vibrant workplace elements in what I've just described to you. And, BMW, this wasn't a wellness initiative. This was like the future of the company initiative, basically. Okay, so let's move on here. Another point I want to make is, 2 minutes? And I'll give you an example. So I get a call from someone who's just been assigned to a wellness committee, and they are basically telling me that they've just been given the task of setting up a wellness program, and they're already overloaded because they're the HR manager, and so they're doing this off the side of their desk, and the senior manager wants results within 6 months. That is not a healthy change process. So one of the things we need to do is back up and say, here we're talking about change in organizations. So how do we design any change, especially something that's supposed to be improving the well-being of employees? How do we design the change itself to be a healthy experience? Well, if you can start out in that way, giving people the time to do it, to sit on a committee, helping them shuffle their priorities, etc. Okay? I mean, again, simple stuff, but it's very powerful, and it sends a powerful signal. And so healthy change is a design feature of an organization. Making it inclusive, I've got a quote from the World Health Organization here that's really defining the essence of health promotion, giving people control over the determinants of their own health and their own environments. This, to me, is the perfect definition of organizational development, giving employees more control over the environments in which they work. That's really what we're talking about here. So there's a perfect alignment between health promotion and organizational development. That's the key point here. Finally, I want to end by suggesting that visions are powerful things. And actually in the book I've got lots of examples, Canadian examples of organizations that have kind of moved further down this path to being really healthy by crafting a new vision. And they label it their own way. And some of them are cute labels and some of them like they're traditional labels. Whatever works for you. It could be the healthy organization. I remember working with one group. They were actually a group of scientists, and they called it the dream workplace. This was their vision. But hey, it worked for them, and it was their vision of where they wanted to go. But it's got to be big. It's got to be bold. This is the sky. This is the aspirational piece. And it will definitely include the elements that Jody has talked about and that Martin has talked about. So that vision, and it can start with your committee. What's the vision that your committee, if you're on one, has of what is possible to achieve in this workplace? So I'm going to end here. I want to encourage you to really think in the biggest terms possible, which is to think of the entire organization and go back and have these discussions with your colleagues. Use the tool, assess your organization, talk about, what is it we really want to achieve here? That's the vision piece. And above all, act the values. If your organization has values, one of the best things you can do if you're a frontline employer or manager is to say, I can actually demonstrate, I can be a role model if I live those values. Every minute. That's what you can do. So thanks for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the discussions. Thanks.